Many thanks, Alison, for this vivid presentation, should I say. Frankly, I must confess this is a discovery for me, but I'm a little bit amazed how sophisticated the system is as compared to some waterless toilets that I have experienced in campings or in our regions. And my question would be, how do you think you can supply the maintenance for such sophisticated devices in remote areas?
So you're right. There's been a criticism of the whole Reinvent the Toilet program that it's very high technology, but it's a decision that Bill himself has made to try and see if there's a high technology solution to this problem, because there are plenty of low technology solutions, but they have their weaknesses. For the maintenance cycle, we would envisage there would be a need to have a certain minimum number of toilets within a geographical area. We're talking about an urban application rather than a rural application, so you should be able to have enough people close enough together to support, and they would be paying a servicing fee. So rather than buying the toilet outright, they would pay a servicing fee which covered the rental of the toilet and the maintenance that was required. So that's how we envisage it to work. There's a similar, if somewhat simpler model being tried in Ghana by a company called Clean Team, which have a regular servicing model, and they're scaling up very, very rapidly at the moment with great success. So we hope to learn some lessons from them as well.
Okay. How are you going to finance the capital expenditure of this? Because this must cost money.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it comes down to this model where rather than paying up front for investing fully in the toilet, you will just pay, the user will just pay a monthly or weekly fee to have the toilet, to rent it and have it maintained. So, yeah.
But who's going to fund the capital?
The foundation?
Okay. So.
UN.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a challenge, but we're working with the Gates Foundation, and they're working a lot on the business models as well. So they've got economists and other people working on those challenges.
Est-ce que oui, Amal?
I have one question. Don't you think that acceptability and sensibilization of the population will remain important issues?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. This can't happen without a significant marketing campaign, and it's something that the sanitation sector are getting much better at, as to how to not just plonk down a solution and then are surprised when people aren't using it, but to really work to try and to try and sensitize communities as to why it's important. And with this product, we hope that it's a desirable product. It's something that people will want to use. Hopefully, as much as a mobile phone, it would be our vision.
Je me tourne vers la salle sur son désir éventuel de questions, pas uniquement sur les toilettes à membrane, à nanomembrane, mais aussi sur la résilience aux crises alimentaires,
oui,
ou d'autres sujets. Oui.
Oui, et une remarque, peut-être une question au sujet précisément de l'intervention de Zoé sur la résilience. Je pense qu'effectivement, traiter du risque, puisqu'il s'agit bien de ça, c'est une dimension absolument essentielle, et bon, je dirais que heureusement que l'on a découvert ce qui, par certains côtés, pouvait quand même sembler une certaine évidence. On l'a découvert ou redécouvert, tant mieux. Tout investisseur sait bien que s'il n'y a pas un minimum de certitude, de stabilité en tout cas dans son environnement, il n'investira pas ou il investira moins. Ces considérations donc très basiques se posent pour l'agriculteur, quelle que soit sa taille. et mentionnons au moins deux risques. Le premier est un risque de prix. C'est probablement pas un hasard si les pays développés et quelques pays émergents ont bien compris que pour développer leur agriculture, il fallait sur ce plan-là, donc sur le risque de prix, apporter un minimum de stabilité aux agriculteurs. Alors c'est un problème difficile, parce que c'est un problème qui devient vite très politique. Parce que quand on veut stabiliser les prix ou apporter un minimum de prix, ce qui n'est pas tout à fait la même chose, mais qui peut revenir à peu près au même, c'est, voilà, pour des tas de raisons dans lesquelles je ne rentrerai pas, ce n'est pas facile, mais il est clair que les pays qui l'ont fait et qui l'ont fait correctement en ont tiré les fruits. Mais le deuxième point qui me semble peut-être plus immédiat et plus accessible, c'est lutter contre le risque, ou plus exactement fournir des instruments contre le risque climatique. Et je fais assurance très précisément à l'assurance. L'assurance agricole, donc, contre les aléas climatiques, a été fortement développée dans certains pays émergents, l'Inde, la Chine, dans les pays développés comme les États-Unis, l'Europe est en train de le faire. L'Afrique du Nord, je pense au Maroc en particulier, qui avait déjà certaines choses, est en train de faire mieux, là encore, beaucoup mieux, bravo. Tunisie aussi un petit peu. Mais malheureusement, sur ce plan-là, encore, l'Afrique subsaharienne est plutôt un peu à la traîne, à l'exception peut-être de pays comme le Sénégal, qui a bien compris que sans une intervention assez forte des pouvoirs publics, les quelques projets qui ont lieu actuellement, et il y en a, ont peu de chances de véritablement émerger en masse et scale up, comme on dirait en anglais, hein, c'est-à-dire prendre une dimension suffisamment importante. Donc voilà, il y a là un instrument potentiellement très fort, non seulement pour lutter contre la pauvreté, mais également en réalité à plus long terme pour contribuer à une intensification de l'agriculture. Chacun comprendra bien que avoir une garantie au cas où il pleut trop ou pas assez, c'est pour l'agriculteur qui peut bénéficier de ces systèmes-là, bien sûr un encouragement, et plus que ça, à investir sur son exploitation et avoir les moyens d'acheter, de continuer à acheter des graines ou des engrais. Donc c'est absolument essentiel, on peut mieux faire, on doit mieux faire là-dessus, et il serait bien que plus de gouvernements réalisent à quel point il y a là une clé essentielle.
Oui, merci beaucoup de ce commentaire, je dois dire. Amal, vous vouliez rajouter quelque chose? Peut-être Zoé voudrait aussi répondre à cette...
I have a question for Zoe.
Oui.
Zoe mentioned in your presentation that you have implemented in Somalia 3 separate programs aiming at enhancing income, at ensuring basic services and social protection. And you have mentioned different agencies that were in charge of working together about these issues. We talked yesterday about the system of governance, which is very important to ensure the success of each project like this. How do you intend to coordinate among the work of the 3 agencies and to ensure needed coherence between the global system to achieve the global goals?
Yes, sorry. I have 3 comments on the previous presentation. The first one about the relationship or the connection between humanitarian assistance or relief and development project. I think this is 2 different concepts, and it needs 2 different mechanisms and should not mix between them, because development means planning, vision, and intersector relationship. Relief or humanitarian assistance means respond the conflict, or respond the disaster, or respond the emergency. And this is sometimes you don't have time to plan, you don't have time even to formulate vision, and the people who are in emergency, they will not wait until one engineer comes and drafting design. This is sometimes psychotherapy more than treatment to the problems of the people. The second thing, which is stakeholders involvement. This is also some things we are repeating the terminology, but when it comes to the practicality, it's very difficult. And I'll give you one example. We live in Palestine under uncertain socio-economic and political conditions. One of the major problems we have, how to coordinate among the donors, not among the Palestinians, not among the main stakeholders. And some donors, they have different agenda, different timetable, different budget, different priorities, and each one trying to impose, let me say that, to impose their agenda. And after that, they come and telling us about stakeholders consultation and community participation. This is also need to be into consideration, since the government, the central government in Somalia or in Palestine is a fragile, scattered, lack of governance, misinstitutionalization process. All these things also important. The last thing I want to talk about it is the prefabricated model. Some international organizations, they come with a prefabricated model. What's working in Somalia doesn't work in Palestine. Then you cannot put international agenda without taking into consideration the local socio-economic and political conditions, and also the local knowledge. Sometimes they come with a prefabricated model with underestimating to the local knowledge, which is sometimes more than so-called international organization. Thank you.
Okay, that's already a lot of questions. On the first question, your comment rather on weather-related insurance, I cannot agree more that climate change being one of the main shocks or stress faced by the producers, this is typically, this would be a very important component of this type of approaches or of climate-smart agriculture type of interventions. Depends what you're talking about and in which context you're working. I totally agree with you, and you see also that there's a direct relation between the two shocks that you mentioned, climate and price for the producer. So also if you can have some insurance against climatic shocks, then your price eventually, you have a bit more control on it. So that's very important for farmers. On the second question from Amal, there were two questions, I think. One was on governance and the other one was on coordination. Both of them are very important. Governance, I didn't have time to talk about it, but of course, for resilience strategies, whether you're, and that relates a little bit to your question, sir, whether you're working in a country that has a very structured and efficient governance system, such as, I don't know, say South Africa, or one that's where institutions have collapsed, like Somalia, you're not going to work the same way. But interestingly enough, I'm just going to give an example to a bit summarize the point that I would like to make on this one. The resilience strategy that I presented to you for Somalia, 1.5 years later, the same agencies with others, by the way, and other NGOs, because we were also working with a consortium of 9 NGOs, by the way. The same strategy was developed in Niger with the Niger government and what we call the Haut Commissariat à l'Initiative 3N, les Nigériens nourrissent les Nigériens. So very much with strong government leadership, and of course then the formulation and the planning of it is completely different because it goes through government structure, but the principles are the same, and the pillars were the same, and I think the philosophy was the same, and it's working very well. So you need to take into account the governance structure that you're working with. It's going to be very different in different contexts, but it can work in different contexts. So I find this quite interesting. Then coordination, you mentioned donor coordination, you mentioned coordination amongst the UN agencies. I myself do a lot of I've done a lot of coordination in my life because we actually we all have mandates, and those mandates are not strictly, aligned, they're actually overlapping each other all the time. And what's interesting with this type of strategies, such as the resilience strategy, is that you try to use the mandates to their best. You try to use the comparative advantages of one and the other, rather than stepping on each other's toes and saying, oh, we're doing the same thing and we're targeting the same beneficiaries, and they got 5 times the same type of intervention, whereas the neighbor got nothing, you know? So I also find great that in this type of approach, you try to use what each one can do best, and each one says, that's where I'm going to contribute, even though we're all doing, for instance, nutrition. WFP, FAO, UNICEF, the 3 UN agencies that I mentioned, we're all working on nutrition. So there are things we're going to do together. We're going to do at the same time. And this type of approach helps to separate. Coordinating the planning is already challenging. Coordinating on the field is even more challenging. When I was working for Somalia, we did that, we launched the first activities now in the first districts. It is feasible to coordinate agencies, even UN agencies on the field, and even with other NGOs. But of course, it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to be a long-term effort, but you can do it if you want. Last, I'm just going to reply finally very quickly to the one, your question on humanitarian assistance versus development. You're right that these approaches are very different. I tried to explain why maybe you could combine them when you look at a shock, you know, and how you need to anticipate on the one hand and respond on the other, because the shock's going to happen. That's a little bit the spirit. Just on this, maybe I think an interesting point to raise here is that we have an old paradigm in mind, which is there's a shock, okay, drought. So we take the same example, Somalia drought, 2011, there's a shock. And we bring in relief, right? Because it's urgent, people are dying, food, medication, vaccines, blah, blah, blah. So we just send, you know, we send the army, people are running and they distribute things. And then we do rehabilitation. We say, oh, you know, now things have to be rebuilt, right? So we rebuild it. And then we believe that when rehabilitation is finally done, which is never really done, right? Never really happens like that. We're going to do development and things are going to be fine. But guess what? In 6 months' time, there's going to be a flood. And then 1 year later, there's going to be another drought. And it's going to be worse than the previous ones. So that is exactly what we don't want to do anymore, is to think that there is a continuum, a logic that goes from relief to development, and that applies to those fragile countries. Those fragile countries, they have a mix of shocks. These shocks are very varied, and they happen all the time. So we need to mix our approaches. This is the same as coordination. It's like, in theory, very well. In practice, it's not impossible, but it takes time. And agencies are moving, donors are moving. If you think of DFID, the UK aid, they have created programs which mix their humanitarian and development instruments. They have not canceled, you know, each one altogether to make a new instrument. That would be beautiful, but that's not the case. You know, we're all used to work in those boxes. That's the problem. We all think like that. So there is humanitarian financing and humanitarian programming, and there is development financing and development programming. So we can't get rid of that overnight. But same thing. If you want to, it can be done. But it's going to be slow. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup Zoé. Je vous propose d'arrêter là cette longue session en vous demandant d'applaudir votre panel et en particulier les dames qui ont été très courageuses. Merci.